To Joe with love. Thank you for everything. Hello, everybody. Today I want to talk to you briefly about President Joe Biden. It has just been announced that President Biden has been diagnosed with stage 4 prostate cancer, and while it has metastasized to his bones, it is still treatable. That is a hopeful message, but that is also a saddening, somber message. I'd like to briefly tell you, and we all know the history of President Biden's life, and it's not an ordinary life. He was a young lawyer, a teacher, a professor, and he practiced law, and he had a family with Bo Hunter, a daughter and his wife, and in a car crash, his first wife and daughter died. And President Biden, who was Joe Biden at the time, was left with his two sons, Bo Biden and Hunter Biden, and was set up on a blind date with what we know now as Jill Biden, with whom we know now as Jill Biden. And they got married, they have a daughter, and that's the family that Joe Biden has had for the last 50-odd years. In that time, President Biden was also one of the longest-serving senators from the great state of Delaware. He is an avid user of Amtrak, would take his trip from Washington to Wilmington on a weekly basis when his children were growing up, and served in the Senate until he resigned upon being elected Vice President of the United States with the President Barack Obama in 2008. We also know that President Biden's son, Bo Biden, was the Attorney General of Delaware, I believe Delaware. And then he enlisted in the National Guard, was sent to Afghanistan, was exposed to toxic burn pits, came back, had brain cancer, and passed away. And that was at the tail end of the Obama-Biden administration. After that, he went out of the spotlight. But after the Charlottesville attack happened and the comments came out about fine people being on both sides, Mr. Biden realized that there was an emergency in our nation and that there was an inflection point, that we were at an inflection point in this country. So he raised his voice and he became active in politics again, despite already having a life of service for about 40 years, over 40 years, 45 years, having endured the tragedy of having lost a wife and a daughter, and then having lost the son that he had dreamed would one day become President of the United States. And so President Biden took it upon himself to fight what was the ugliness of authoritarianism and fascism that we are seeing in our country now. He ran against Donald Trump and he won by over 7 million votes. He became president, and in the first 2 years of his presidency, he signed the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS Act, the Infrastructure Act, and gun rights legislation that had not been passed in over 35 years. He brought the country back from the economic and societal abyss of the COVID pandemic and brought the country in 4 years to becoming what The Economist magazine called the economy that was the envy of the world. He defied the odds, and he provided, despite the disinformation about him and the accusations surrounding him and his son Hunter Biden, who has suffered for quite some time with substance abuse, and I wouldn't blame that on him squarely, given the life that Hunter has had. President Biden remained resilient in supporting our country, moving our country forward, helping Ukraine preserve their democracy and provide aid, and did his best to bring America back from the abyss. His last 2 years were less productive. They were filled with attacks on his age and on his corruption, which Republicans have yet to prove to this day. And then now, after he has left office, there are books coming out about how he was slow and not thinking straight during his presidency. While he got all these things done, while he safeguarded our environment that Donald Trump is now undoing, while he safeguarded and limited the costs of medicine, life-saving diabetes medicine that Donald Trump reversed and then now is re-implementing, by Donald Trump pausing the infrastructure projects that Donald Trump himself knows that he needs in order to move the country forward, that are being illegally withheld by Donald Trump now, that were passed by Congress and signed into law by President Biden as the Infrastructure Act and the CHIPS Act. And that's where we are now, where we now hear about President Biden's health, and the right starts to make fun of it and starts to gossip about it, start to put it in as shameless of a light as you can. And I am not going to give them the time to tell you what they have said. Suffice it to say that it's not worth talking about. What we now need to focus on, and I would like to ask every single one of you, whether you believe in God or not, that you ask that the universe watch over President Biden and provide comfort to his family and loved ones. May he win his battle with cancer and stay with us for a long time to come. We need his wisdom in these trying times. We need his example of love for country. Stay strong, Mr. President. Take care, everybody.